All right, Michael. So tell us a little about your background, your story, and what you're doing today.
For sure. So I started off as an entrepreneur for kind of as long as I remember. In elementary school, I would do all the classic things like lawn mowing, snow shoveling. I've always when I was doing those stuff, I always had ideas like, how do I bring in other people from my school to help scale it?
So I don't have to be the one shoveling snow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I did a small car wash business. And then once I moved back to LA, so I lived in Canada for a little bit. Once I moved back to LA, I went to a high school that was pretty rigorous. So we started at 7 in the morning. We finished at 10 p.m.
That's nuts.
It's insane. So when I would get home, I would just right away, me and my brother would right away kind of get to work, and we worked.
So your brother and you, after that long day of school, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
That's how we got our energy, I guess, working.
Then y'all do work for 3 hours.
Yeah,
what were you working on? Like your small businesses?
Yes. No. So already at that point, we knew we wanted to do online. So something to do with online, selling online. We had these people in our community. Yeah, we had these people in our community who were big sellers online, and they were also younger. They weren't as young as us then, but they were younger. We knew they started when they were in high school. So I just asked them, I'm like, yo, just teach me what you're doing. I don't know what this stuff, I need to learn about it. So we started on eBay. We did well on eBay. And then from there, we're like, hey, we want to get into Amazon. So we started with Amazon. We brought in a few private label products, launched them on Amazon. And from there, it just developed into a brand that we just started building out, scaled that on Amazon. And then, we were doing this all throughout the breaks in middle of school. At one point, we got a warehouse that was a few blocks away from my school. So we would be able to drive there on breaks and kind of make sure everything was
during your 7 to 10 p.m. school.
Yeah. So we would get lunch break for an hour. So we would drive there during lunch and then just check on everything. And then during dinner break, we would go there, make sure everything was running, and we'd take care of some stuff, pack some stuff up. So that was really cool. I remember in the early days before we had our warehouse, we would pack in our room, everything. And then I had all my siblings help. And then some days we wouldn't finish packages in time. So we would have them all in the trunk of my car. And then during break, even breakfast break and stuff like that, we would just go up to the car, pack stuff up, and then drop them off at the post office.
Shipping stuff out to people that have been order online.
Yeah.
Little did they know that you're over there packing stuff out of your car.
So everybody in high school, they always knew, me and my brother were just packing stuff out of our car. And then until we got our warehouse and we were able to kind of scale that. And from there, what I saw about Amazon is it led us down this opportunity of building a brand. And then from there, kind of learned a lot more about business and then how we could expand to other areas and other channels. And from there, we expanded to Walmart, which...
Building a brand as a seller?
As a seller, yes.
Because you weren't necessarily manufacturing the products you're selling.
Correct. So the first private label product we launched was a workout glove.
Okay.
And from there, we were like, okay, let's stay in the fitness space. So we built out more fitness products under a brand that we just developed, and then we just kept expanding a line of products. So instead of going to a bunch of categories, we stayed really focused in the fitness area for a while. Eventually, we did some other categories, but that was kind of the main focus. And I think what's cool is traditionally, it's really expensive to build a brand. It takes a lot of time. With Amazon, it kind of sped up the process.
Yes.
Because you basically have to come up with some basic branding, and then you could build it as the brand scales and as you sell more products. So that was cool.
Yeah. And so then you started talking about Walmart. So now, then you, from Amazon, eBay, Amazon, and then started doing some stuff on Walmart.
Yeah. So then we expanded to Walmart. So we're like, hey, we built this brand because of Amazon. So why don't we sell on other channels, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were selling, I remember on random channels where we were selling on HSN, QVC. We were selling on Target at one point. And one of the channels we were selling on was Walmart. And what we noticed was that Walmart was selling really, really well with very minimal effort. And then kind of we saw there was very low competition. We're like, hey, this is really interesting. We started having a lot of challenges with Amazon. So we're like, okay, what about we put the same level of focus we put on Amazon to really understand their algorithm, understand the nuances, and try to really focus that in on Walmart and see what we could do. And, sure enough, we became the bestseller for our category on the marketplace side of things. And we were able to really scale that. We had a few really successful products. And from there, I kind of realized that brands really didn't know a lot of nuance about the platform or about anything, how to run stuff. So then that's kind of where it led me down the service path of understanding, okay, there's really good opportunity here to really service brands that are trying to grow on Walmart. whether it's Walmart Marketplace or just in general Walmart.com, they have all of these struggles, or they're just not adapting quick enough to that. So there's good opportunity there. So that's kind of where we started Cellcord, which is a Walmart agency, and we exclusively focus on Walmart.com, primarily on the marketplace side. That's kind of been my focus, and we've really scaled that up.
And like full service, basically helping brands or whatever get on Walmart Marketplace and accelerating that.
Exactly, yeah. So full service. So it's everything from helping with the strategy, because if it's a larger business that has a current kind of 1P presence, it's very important for the marketplace strategy to be well tied into what they're doing on their 1P side of things. If it's a business that isn't on Walmart at all, they don't understand the Walmart ecosystem at all. So there's also a lot of strategy of which items make sense, how to go about it. So then we'll handle the strategy to actually preparing them for launch, getting them launched on the platform, and then growing the business and managing the business for them, because a lot of times they don't have the time, resources to really spend managing the day-to-day of what's needed to manage a marketplace platform. So that, it was a whole new world for me, because it's the service side of things, and I've always dealt with the product side of things. But I think in truth, my strengths were always on the relationship side.
Yeah.
And when you're on the product side of the business, you don't really leverage that so much. So I think as I tapped into the service side of things, been able to really put my focus and just operate I think more efficiently, just because of where my natural abilities are.
Well, and it sounds like you enjoy it.
Yeah, I love it.
You do.
Yeah.
So, what is it that you love about it?
So I love the part about it where there's so many facets to it.
Yeah.
Right. There's so many facets to servicing kind of clients, and it's how do you grow the part of the business? There's the marketing, there's the sales, there's the all these different relationships, right? Growing the relationships with existing business, getting new business. The relationships with Walmart. So there's so many relationship aspects to it, where I feel when you have something unique and you really give the relationship your all, there's so much opportunity that comes from it. And it's enjoyable to just meet cool people, meet a lot of people, get to make a lot of friends in the industry. So I like that part of it a lot. And then I really like the competitive nature of it, where there's these older legacy, competitors in the space that have been around forever that just operate. They're big and successful because of how large they've been and kind of what they tapped into maybe 20 years ago. And now they're just kind of leveraging that success. But in a lot of times they're not doing things the right way. So the competitive angle of it just keeps me excited. And it's a really good push to kind of really try to take a big portion of that market. So
yeah, I appreciate both things you're saying. I think on the relationship side, on the service side, I've discovered a couple years ago, it was about I didn't even realize this. We did this neural color thing, one of those psychological exams or personality tests is a better way to put it. The entire team did it, and I've done a few of these things, but the neural color was really neat because it actually helped a guy like me that if I can just see 4 simple colors, then I can maybe remember what this test was about. But it came back, I was a high yellow visionary, which didn't surprise me. But then there's this green color that came in. And I was really high on that, almost 1 point off. But I read a bullet point in there. It's the 3rd bullet point down. I was like, what the hell does green mean? What, collaboration or something. But there's this 3rd bullet point down. I'll never forget.
Is that what inspired the color for this podcast?
Yeah, maybe it is. Let me do a neural color test about that. But there's I was kind of disappointed in me being so high on that, right? I'm not. But anyway, this 3rd bullet point said, I get more satisfaction in seeing people try something and fail, but they do it on their own. I remember reading that going, oh my God, man, that's a truth to me. I love seeing other people. I love helping other people, seeing them grow, take on new challenges, become better, doing kind of what might seemingly be impossible today, but then you fast forward 2 years and they're doing it in their sleep. It's so rewarding to me. And I don't know, when you were talking about that, because what you're saying is y'all had a successful business in the product side. And there's probably a lot of people that want to do a product. I would say that if you took a poll of an audience, most people would say, oh, I'd love to create a brand and sell a brand on e-com. You don't hear as many people saying, oh, I want to start a service business.
Yeah. It's not as sexy. I don't know.
Yeah. Initially sexy. Yep. But I think that what you said is pretty neat. And Mark and I talk about a lot about that, being an entrepreneur and starting a business, like there's a lot of opportunity in the service business. So have you seen that? Have you seen that opportunity? I guess you have.
Yeah. So I think that really helps clarify my first point. Like, what's the stuff that I really like about the business, and I really like the opportunity, right? Because seeing how much extra opportunity there is, and I think when you're in the product business, you develop a product, you put it on a platform and a retailer or whatever it is, and then there's a few levers you could pull to try to make more sales, right? So like, there's definitely things you could do. You could add on products. You could, there's some tactics you could try. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. You're competing against so many people, and sometimes you hit that thing that works really well and you could scale it, and sometimes you don't, and then it's a little bit challenging and it takes a little bit longer. With service-based businesses, I think it's just so wide, the area that you could service clients, and you're so in touch with what they need. So like, you have a relationship with a client, you know that this is what they're looking for, and if you could provide this service in a scalable way, this and that, you could expand your services and offer that. And I think you're much closer to the customer, right? As opposed to when you're selling product, it's a little bit harder. And you're just so much closer to the customer with the service-based businesses. So you're able to get a lot of this insight of like what the industry needs, what the community needs, and pretty easily to kind of distribute it and scale that. So as long as like you build the foundational elements really well and you have a really good service, I think scale comes really quickly.
Okay.
And I think, in general, people look at service businesses and like they're not as scalable, but I think it's really all about the foundations you set with a service business,
Man, that's good. So tell us about some of those foundations. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. So I think for foundations, it's really important a few things, right? So like, and I think in different service-based businesses, it might be a little bit different, but in ours, and you've probably seen this through your career, in ours, it's really been about what's the services that you're offering, right? And if your value proposition is simply cost savings, or is simply, we do something a little bit better than somebody else, it's really hard to really scale, because what ends up happening is there's a portion of the market that's always looking for service, and you could maybe fight for that portion of the market and get that service. But we have to realize like most of the market already is being serviced, whether it's internally or externally, they're already being serviced. So getting somebody to switch their provider from what they're doing, or even if it's not a provider, or if it's from an internal way of doing things, there has to be a good enough reason why. So like, your value proposition has to be strong in a few different ways, where collectively it's like, okay, this is a no-brainer for my business. And I think too often a lot of services try to push something that they've developed, or a product they developed, or a service they've developed that just doesn't fit really well into what those people are doing. And I always tell my team, if you have one way to get into with the client and prove ourselves, even if it's a very small kind of contract, a small way, they gave us enough trust for us to do our job. If we do our job really well, then it could open up more of that. So I think it really comes down to like, and you don't have to get it right the first time either, right? Like, just be intentional about when you're structuring what you're trying to sell for that. And then if you have that done well, like, you'll see it'll scale really quickly. So that's kind of the first thing I think is the most important, is just really figuring out like, what are you trying to sell, making it in a way that it's applicable to the market that you're trying to sell to. And then like, you could try something and then you speak to a few people, you see you're getting pushback. Like, don't just now try pushing it to another 10, 15 people.
Yeah, like, right.
Revisit what you're trying to push, right? Whether there's something off with your proposal, your value proposition, or maybe it's just how you're talking about it, or maybe it's the actual service. So I think like that part, setting that foundational is like very, very important. And then,
and when we say that foundation, I mean, like, when you say that to me, in my experience, I'm thinking you're talking about building a team culture that thinks that way.
Exactly. I think it's like the team that thinks that way and builds stuff that way. And then it's like, just the direction you give them of like where to think, how to think about things, because if they just think of like, okay, this is the service proposal that you gave me, right? And that I have, so I'm just going to try pushing this to many people. Like, no, I think you have to get them to think of like understanding the customer, reworking that stuff, especially when you're in those earlier stages, and kind of building that. And if you have a team that's able to think that way and do those type of stuff, then like,
because like my thing is like my experience has taught me, and I'm a lot, I think, more aware to this now with my new businesses. It's like I'm literally just really playing a part of a coach all the time. I'm not actually playing the game as much. Like, I'm trying to help my team like figure out things. I know that there's mistakes they're going to make. I can see them so blatantly obvious, but But when they do get a feedback from a customer, but it's like relentlessly putting back into their mind, like, oh, the customer wants that, then absolutely you do it. You want guidance, you hear what your customer is asking you, what the market's demanding from you.
Yeah, I think that's probably where it's a little bit challenging, because like when you're a really new business, I think you don't really have so much of a choice sometimes, where like you have to get a lot of the initial stuff right in a very short amount of time, right? Because, you know, whatever your funding is or whatever the costs are and all that kind of stuff. But I think too many business owners stay in that mindset for too long. But like as soon as you're able to basically let people make mistakes, let people drive things and give them kind of that guidance, so like they'll make less mistakes, they'll notice when they made mistakes and kind of doing that, then you build it much more sustainably, right? So like I think in businesses, like this is what I think of it, is you want to build the buffer, and people have different opinions on this, but in my opinion, like you want to do whatever you can. If you really, you have your idea, you're really confident, you want to make it work, you've done some market research, like you want to get into it, then there's like that first page. Like, okay, what's for me, like with Cellcord, our Walmart agency, it was like, okay, let me talk to a few, you know, friends I have in the space, like what are their challenges, how they currently, once I had an idea, okay, this is really makes sense, like people need support for the marketplace side, and it's like, I want to do everything I can to make sure we have life to figure out the mistakes, to figure out things, and to get it scale. So there's this period of time where it's like, build a sustainable business. So what does that mean? We need to have X amount of revenue with X amount of clients. Like, what do we do to get that done? And like build that foundation, right? From that foundation, now you have room to make mistakes, right? Unless you're funded and all this kind of stuff. But if you're bootstrapping it, it's like you need to have the room to make those mistakes. So you have that initial phase where you're pushing as hard as you can. You make sure that you bring those clients in, and maybe not all of them are the exact clients you want down the road, and maybe not all of them are the exact paying you the exact amount you want and all that. But you learn enough about the business through that, and you build a foundation. And now that third phase is really, now you want it to build in a really scalable way, which I think where it comes down to, like, you have to really let your team take charge. You have to let them make mistakes. You have to let them lead the way. And like being a good coach, the better of a coach you are, the better you'll kind of move that way. So some people could skip that with like funding that second phase a little bit.
Right.
But as an entrepreneur, if you never had experience in that middle phase, I think it's worse to kind of jump to that. I think like with probably your next businesses, you've already seen kind of what has to be done in that middle and foundational phase. So when you go to that phase of building stuff up, you already, know a little bit more about that. But I think for any entrepreneur, it's so important to get that phase.
You have to be a player coach, right?
Yep.
Player. Exactly. You have to play the ball. Play the game.
Otherwise, like, I feel like also then the team doesn't respect you as much when you don't understand kind of the nuances. Like, I think this is like, we have a technology division, and I think it's the hardest for me to manage because I don't understand a lot of those stuff, right? So it's like, I could take the principles that we use managing our other teams and try to apply that to technology, but it's a little bit hard to do it effectively when I don't understand what goes into it. I don't understand when they're telling me it takes this long to do, like, why does it take so long?
Yeah, right. Why does this take so long?
Like,
no, I'm with you, man. I'll give you a little bit of relief on that, like, because I had some, that experience as well. Like, it still is so frustrating to me on all the technology side of things. I think that it's mostly related to you being an entrepreneur. But I mean, like, to go down that road, like what I do, is I'm almost, let's talk about tech real quick, because I think this is cool. Oh,
I got knocked out.
It's all right, man. It's okay, man. It's the lids. The lid's full.
The lids in Arkansas don't stay on.
Right. And if we were like a proper podcast studio, we would like stop the show and take care.
Where's my hair makeup?
Exactly. But on the technology side, it's like there's a lot of tech opportunity with the business I have now. But I've learned that, like, to your point, you cannot build a tech unless you play ball. I think there's a big disservice that a lot of the things that are going on in the West Coast and other places, everybody raises capital for an idea about a technology, and it's really just an idea with a market need or gap that they see. They go raise and build all this funding, and then they spend millions and hundreds of millions of dollars building this tech, but there's not any real guts like to the deal. Now, but for you know exactly what tech needs to be built. because you worked in the weeds of the audience, right?
That's really what it comes out to. My whole philosophy on technology, there'll be, and I tell this to the team all the time, there's going to be teams with way better developers, way more money, and all that kind of stuff. But they're just building a lot of times in the wrong direction. And my philosophy is, if we're the closest to the customer and we're the closest to the business, we know the things that really impact the business. That edge of building the right product will outdo the edge of the more money and all that kind of stuff. I think it's just really important to like not only be really close to it, not only when you're developing the product, but as you're expanding the product and as you're growing it, to be really close to kind of the customer. And that's, I think, I think you've seen this in the space. There's a lot of this tech that comes out, and sometimes they rarely hit it on the nail right away. Some companies are better at adapting to the customer, getting closer to the customer, and then their technology becomes much better and they get to that place. I just think so much of that time would be cut down if they just had more communication with the kind of customer.
Man, to be honest with you, there's very few softwares on the entire planet Earth that are really, really great.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like
there's always these gaps between the product and the customer.
Well, it's so hard, and I don't know why it's so freaking hard. Like going back to the developer thing, like as an entrepreneur, working with developers has got to be one of the most, or the development, not developers, but development process.
Yep.
Is one of the most frustrating freaking things on the planet.
It's such a different speed, and I think as entrepreneurs, you have to make pivots so often, right? To really stay in tune and things like that. And on the development side, it's really hard to make pivots, right? Like we have to change our infrastructure, this, that, but and sometimes I ask for change and it's like so easy. And sometimes I ask like, are you crazy? Like, you know what we have to do that? So I think it's just like, I think that's so funny, and it's like, you're like, why? And like, I don't
then people start saying, hey, Michael's crazy. Then it spreads throughout the other department. And then next thing you know, it's in your customer success and your sales team. And you're like, no, wait a minute, folks. I'm not crazy. It was for this one thing.
This is one idea, And it's like, I'm like, I wish I wish I went, I used to always say, I wish I went to law school. Because then I would understand a little more, like when lawyers are talking, all this other stuff. But now, like, I wish I went to development boot camp, because like it just, you get that and you'll be doing the same kind of training as some of these people are thinking. And I think there's so much opportunity with development. But I think also one of the big challenges are when you're building technology, it has to target like a pretty widespread audience because you're trying to make it really scalable. If you're trying to make it really scalable, it needs to target a pretty wide net. And when it's targeting a really wide net, there's going to be people who it's a better fit for. But usually, because you're making a really wide net, it's not really a great fit for anybody. But it'll be the next best up solution. But for a company to invest a ton of money to build the best product for that one niche, a lot of times it's not a large enough of a niche, right? So like you think about Walmart technology, right? Yeah. Like for marketplace, like there'll be solutions that'll help holistically, but marketplace for a lot of these people, for Walmart marketplace isn't big enough for a lot of these providers to really build out really tailored technology to help with. So
or you build something in a very deep niche that becomes irrelevant to the market. Because it takes so freaking long
to do it, so you can't. It's hard to time it too.
It really is, and there's so much risk to that. So Mark and I get on this conversation a lot, like this whole funding versus being bootstrapped, right? Like if you're setting out, like it's really challenging for the entrepreneur that's bootstrapping to do that because you have to be so diligent to think about the longevity of that fad. Is it a fad, or is it something that's going to be actually useful? But a lot of these folks that go out and raise money, they're taking bets on fads, and they're expecting a development in 9 months of some massive system with huge campaigns. But I mean, that whole economy does kind of pay off. It's the 1 to 10 one home run out of 10 deals kind of deal.
I think what's really hard when you're funded is it's really hard to get to this place to really know if your business is sustainable, right? Yeah. Because you never really discover that because there's always money padding the mistakes, right? So like, and like I one time had one of my clients introduce me once to like an advisor who's on the like executive team of a really large company, and he was telling me like, he told me that basically what ends up happening when you take funding is it just pads a lot of those problems. Yep. So if you don't fix those problems before they get bigger and bigger and bigger, if you were bootstrapped, you would notice that they're getting bigger and bigger because they're really affecting your business. But if you're not bootstrapped, if you're funded, then that money just covers the problem, right?
Yeah.
And it's the problem's getting bigger and bigger. You just don't see really that problem. And I think with funded businesses, it's like you could have a lot of the things right, but if a few of those key elements aren't right, it could be really hard to make the business model work. And then you rely on a series A, B, C, D until somebody acquires you, and then they're able to make it work within their org chart because of other reasons.
Because they already have a clientele list
clients
needs,
and all this other stuff, or what it helps them positioning in the market and all this kind of stuff. But if in reality, if you strip it down, it's not a good business, right, on its own. And I think what ends up happening is when a business isn't a good business on its own, unless you hit the home run, you're kind of screwed. So I think where you really want to be as an entrepreneur is that even if you're funded, is that you really want to be in a place where your business could survive on its own, especially in today's economy. If you could be in a business where today, when your business is sustainable and can survive on its own, then there's a whole market of who your business makes sense to. It makes sense for yourself because you're making money on it. It makes sense to, private equity investors who are just looking for businesses that make money. But it'll still make sense for that big investor necessarily that's looking for a home run, because it still has that upside if you build it the right way, but it also has that safety kind of net of that. So I think like when you kind of balance that, just if you're going to take funding, it's so important to understand like, what do you really, unless you only care about the home run, and if not, whatever. But that's so hard to like run a business that way.
It is, but they're playing the game though.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
stuff out of your control, right?
There
like,
totally is.
Right? Because like,
I don't think that it like when Mark and I talk about, I don't know that those people that take money for the game of the money of the system, I don't think that they're real entrepreneurs.
Yep.
I think that they're great salespeople.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
It's just different.
It's different, right? Yeah. Like because here's what my problem is I've tried to I have tried to raise capital, and I get really, really frustrated really quickly when I try to raise capital for my businesses, because like I'm not coming to you looking for money to save me. I'm coming to let you know there's an opportunity for you here, bro. And this thing is me massive. If I had a little capital, I know that I could take that and expedite the timeline of success here, right? And so, but when it starts getting into all these things and these pitch decks and all this stuff that they want to see, which rightfully so, if you're an investor, you want to see that. I don't have the patience. I'm out. I'm just going to do it on my own, because I would rather take this 30 minutes that I just spent talking to you, and the 2 hours I had to get prepared for it, and all the full. I'd rather talk to a client.
Get a new client and get that.
Do you feel that way?
I think where money, when you're an entrepreneur, like it's like those phases you go through where you have to like prove your business concept. You have to, if you have too much money in that proving your business concept, a lot of times I think what ends up happening is that you burn through all that without solving the core issues that need to be solved, right? But you have to be kind of aware and figure out, okay, like when you're at that place that you're talking about where it's like you just want to get there faster and you're actually at that place, are you able to get clients that'll get you there faster and more business? Or it depends on your business and how capital intensive it is, or that money might be able to kind of help you. But then you also have to realize what cost that money's coming at, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
What are those people, are they going to help you, or are they going to slow you down, right? Sometimes you could take money with people that are going to help you, right? Because they want you to succeed and they have good partnerships in the space and this and that. But like likely if you're taking from a really big investor and they have a bunch of deals, like you're not getting any help. If anything, their processes are all going to, kind of...
It's going to take you some suck your time.
It's going to suck your time and your energy, which I feel like is what you need in that space. So like, I feel like it's kind of...
Time and your energy is what's needed in entrepreneurship.
Yep, exactly.
So did you bootstrap your business?
So I bootstrapped it all upon this point where we're probably taking some funding.
Yeah.
And kind of it's like, in my opinion, we're kind of at that stage where...
And we're talking about from when you were in high school.
Yep.
Like even your product side.
So my product side, I bootstrapped it. I had a partnership in a brand that my partner invested money in.
Okay.
And I think, from that kind of experience, it does speed up a lot of things, but also you're not forced to really think about if what are you trying to force, are you trying to force something that just it's too hard to force, or it's going to take too long to get there? We were talking about this yesterday. It's like how ahead of you are of the curve. Like are you wrong about your theory, right? So are you you come up with an innovative product, right? It could be that you're wrong, the market doesn't want it. It could be that you're just too early for the market, right? And it could be that you're a year too early, which it might be good because you could build up and wait it out.
Be ready, yeah.
Or you could be 5 years too early where you're not going to have enough runway to really figure that out. So I think it's a lot about that timing. And, so when, the product side of businesses, like when you have, on my partner invested money, like when you have that investment, it speeds up some things, but it also, I think,
sometimes you don't want to be sped up.
Yep, exactly. And then you're not forced to really think as critically about like, do people want what you're selling, right?
Yeah.
And then for the agency, we've completely bootstrapped it from like nothing. And then we built that up. My first business, we started with $500. Like the agency was also very minimal capital. We bootstrapped it. And we've been around for like 3.5 years. We're at the stage right now where we've reached some really strong scale, really strong partnership with Walmart. We've like really, I think, cracked a lot of the S&P portion of the business, and now we're kind of, growing on the enterprise side of things. And our philosophy right now is the market's at an interesting point. 3 years ago was early, so it gives us a lot of time to build out. The market in regards to Walmart marketplace is really growing. There's, we're positioning ourselves as a leader, but like, it's for anybody for the taking, right?
Sure.
So we're the best position, in my opinion, to take us further. So that's like, do we take capital from a strategic investor who will help us grow at the same time? So who will help us kind of get there faster? And then if they could add in some strategic support as well, like, we get advisors that really care about the business. So that's what we've been working on. And, we're closing in on that round, which I think is really interesting because it gives us, I think in our stage in the business, it's like, what does the capital do, right? It brings on investors who are advisors who are not massive investors who are there to kind of, help us in that. So I think that's a really cool thing. And then number 2 is it gives us stability in the business, right? So you could have a really good business, but there always could be different.
Yeah, there's ebbs and flows, seasonalities, cash flow.
Like I was speaking to an advisor and they told us like, you always want to have, for example, like 3 months of reserves in your full reserves in a reserve account. And I'm like, when you think about that, it might not sound like a lot, but when you think about like all your payroll, all your costs, especially when you're service provider business, a lot of your costs is like your payroll and most of it is.
Sure.
So it's like, you think about that, it's like a lot of money. And I'm like, why do you need that much if your revenue is recurring and all that? And he's like, you just end up making better decisions if you don't have to worry. And if you have more of that kind of mental clarity, that's up. So there's like the stability of the business where like, now you have a good business, it's scalable. How do you just make sure that you could focus on the right things and focus 6 months, a year out, 2 years out, because that the business is in a good spot. So I think like stability for the business. And then there's the main point, which is the acceleration, right? And I think that's where it's like, it's so hard because you really have to be critical about it. Like, does the money really bring acceleration? And sometimes it doesn't, right? And it's a lot about how you use the money too, right? And I think, how much money you take too. Then it comes down to like, what's the amount of money that you could effectively utilize that'll actually grow your business in a much short amount of time? Because the way I look at it is if you're able to grow your business really quickly with that amount of money, then you didn't really give up anything because you traded money for added valuation because now your business is worth more, making more money. But if you use that money poorly, now you're worse than when you kind of started. So it's a lot about like, what are you trying to get out of the money? And I think when you're a bootstrap business, you've proven your business to be profitable and successful, and now you're just trying to scale it. I think it can make a lot of sense to make money, but who knows?
Yeah.
We'll find that in a year.
Well, when you're investing in, like, I mean, you said it earlier, like in a service-based business, like your biggest cost or where your money's going is people.
Yep.
How do you make those decisions? Like, I mean, because bringing people on is I mean, it's either there's not many circumstances where it's detrimental. Like I've only experienced a few bad apples, right? That really harmed the business. I've experienced very few, if like probably about the same number that really like accelerated the business. Most of everything else has been kind of standard.
Yep.
There's and it's standard in the sense of where it hadn't really accelerated, but it definitely didn't harm. It was.
I mean, it's needed to kind of.
Yeah, it sustained. It did what it needed to do, right? I mean, like, how are you?
I look at it in a very similar way. Like, you have your leadership, so you have your ownership, which is gonna like live and breathe.
Yeah.
Right? Then you have like
or die.
Yeah, live and die by it, right? Then you have your leadership, which in an ideal scenario are those few apples who really push the business forward, right? And there's like two levels of leadership. There's like the ones that really push the business forward, and then there's the ones that manage the rest of the business, right? Yeah. So for like manage the business, like I think it's too hard to get everybody to be like the best thinkers, the best, most visionary. And you don't necessarily want that. So like I think, for the management, it's a lot about for management, what we have to understand, like what we want out of our business. When we understand what we want and what we need to service our current business and then what we need for growth, there's like two elements, right? So it's like, what do we need for growth and what do we need to service the business? And I think there's a lot of people that fit into that equation. So then it's like filling the gaps of that, right? It's like, who are people that are going to really service our clients well? Like what do we care about? Growing our clients. So who are like strategic thinkers and proactive thinkers? We want good relationships with our clients. Like, are they good relationship builders? And then are they good team players? There's a lot of people we're going to have to work with. Like if we fill in those gaps and we, we'll have a good sustainable kind of team. Yeah. But then there's like the people that really drive the business forward. As many of the leaders you could get that really push, I think the rest of the team ends up, slowly pushing as well. So it's like when you think about from like client servicing teams and advertising leads and things like that, like you want them to be people that are visionary and pushing, but you don't need a ton of those, right? If you have too much of those, also it'd be too much too.
Absolutely.
So it's like we have bigger ownership because I have some partners. So like I think we have a lot of people that are already pushing. But yeah, now we're trying to hire some more leadership that actually really helps with that as well. Because I think the best feeling for me as an entrepreneur is when I see, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, but like as I see other people like take on projects themselves, drive it, and just do it. Like, and I'm like, that's success, right? Because it's like you've given them the infrastructure to do it, the confidence to be able to do it.
That's it.
And now you get the outcome without any of your energy having, because there's a certain amount of projects you can manage.
That's right. And if enough people do that, then the whole company is lifted. Now this entity can do things that it never thought it could do.
And then one leader in this department sees somebody's doing that, so they gives the other leader confidence who might have it in them to do it. They just didn't have enough of the push to do it. And I think when you're probably like a really important place for it is where we are, where like there's the infrastructure for them to be able to do that, right? But we're not too large, and we're not large like a really large company where like there's so much risk if they venture out and do some of these things, and I like, as much as I hate on the really big companies, I kind of see it too. Like, why should they take the risk of trying something new, of doing something new where if it messes up, they lose a lot more. And if they win on it, they sometimes don't win that big because to win big in their scope, it has to be a really, really big win.
Massive.
Yeah. So it's like, that's the opportunity for businesses of our size is like capture that.
Yeah. With a few minutes we have left, you brought it up before, the different kind of levels or whatever, or diversity of folks on the team, leaders, et cetera. But as a founder, right? I mean, don't you think that like as the founder entrepreneur of the company, like you are kind of on an island?
Yeah, I think it's funny because I think like as the team gets bigger, you have to try to bring yourself closer and closer to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you end up feeling like you're so different. And like I had to try to learn how to contain a lot of my thoughts, you know what I mean? And like all my ideas, because they're like, oh my God, my CEO always tells me, and he's a co-founder, he always tells me like, yo, like the second I think like I have stuff in a good place and I'm clearing stuff out, like we got a good flow, you just add on more projects. I'm like, but yeah, that's kind of what I do. And I think as you get bigger, like it's like, different leaders are able to be like, okay, this is a good idea. We have capacity for this, or we don't, or and they're able to make kind of decisions. But in the beginning, you have to just force it, because you're convinced this is what has to be done to make it work. And I think it's fine if that's wrong, but you have to be so sure you're like right in the beginning to just power through it. And like power all that adversity and everything. And even if a lot of the stuff's wrong, but like if you start second guessing all this stuff, like you just don't end up with the confidence to really build it out. But then as your company establishes and builds bigger, you don't need all that.
Yeah, you don't need that all the time.
Yeah, you don't need that all the time. You know, it's like, it's fine if it's like, you know,
because
somebody telling you that's a stupid idea. Like, I'll go in like to my CTO's office and I'll be like, hey, what do you think about this? And like, he'll just give me his opinion, like, hey, it's a bad idea or it's a good idea. Sometimes I'll listen, sometimes I won't. Sometimes I want to hear from like another third person, you know, what they think, you know?
Sometimes you'll get the answer you wanted.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, I mean, that's. I actually find this conversation refreshing because there's not many people I can actually like ask that question, and I'm like, oh, thank God, there's somebody else. Because I mean, man, I've caused a lot of problems in the past about not being aware of what I was doing, and the bad thing about it is I wasn't like not only was I hurting other people and processes, but I was also being very frustrated myself, and I was mad, you know, or angry about that scenario until I did realize, like you talked about, like you get to the point where you walk in the office and you ask your partner, you got this idea there, and they say one thing that like is kind of has some good sense to it. That's why not to do it. But I'm easy to forget it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, okay, I'll drop it.
But sometimes I'm like, oh, they're just so pessimistic.
Sure, yeah,
right? And like, there is examples of times where like in the beginning, everybody shut it down. And like, I still was persistent. And 3 months later, like, I had to buy it, you know?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But sometimes, like, you know, 3 months later, they're like, yo,
you're still
smoking something. Like, you know, like, it's not it. And then I'm like, okay. But then the goal is, after thinking about it for so many times, as long as you're like not too stubborn, once you're, you know, and that's the thing. I think when your business is really new, it's fine to like just
it is totally
be stubborn.
That's why I think I love like this new business
because it's new.
It's new, you know. I can just
nobody's telling you what to do. That's like, what?
But I do know. Here's what I do know is I know that there's going to be a point, like, and it's probably getting closer day by day.
Yeah.
To where I'm going to need that partner that comes in and just level sets things, and then I kind of hang out and be crazy for a while. You know, it's kind of like you're the jester in a way. And then at some point, the team will build it and it'll be beautiful. But then I'm going to go find something else.
Yep.
Because I got to be able to play. Like, it's been really refreshing for my life as an entrepreneur to start back up again.
Get back in the ball game.
Yeah, it's like there's a humbling feeling to it. There's a humility to it. There's a shame. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing better than like being a little bit worried.
Yep.
You know, because when you build a business,
comfortable.
Man. It's like taking it's just not gritty enough, man. It's not. It doesn't have enough danger to it. Maybe that's part of it too. And you know,
the unknown is cool. I think it leads excitement, you know. The unknown, like not knowing what's going to happen a little bit.
Which is, I think, probably why you kind of like working with clients so much, because like every new business that you service is like a new challenge.
It's a new challenge. Yep, exactly.
There's something in there that's not working right. You got to figure it out.
And then we get better as a team, and then we can accomplish the next kind of client better.
Yeah. Once you solve that client's problem, like it needs to be sustained, but that's not where you're going to play as an entrepreneur because it's
kind of client servicing base.
That's for the folks that want to
be out. And that's actually one big thing about being an entrepreneur that I learned is that you really have to let those people like live their life. And it's like I think, you know, sometimes when those people are surrounded by entrepreneurs, they feel like they need to be working late and doing this stuff. And I'm like, your life is like, I get it. It's a stressful life. Like coming at, like, I don't want you to work extra. Like, because if you work extra, then you're just going to resent it, you know? Yeah. Like, unless I feel like you're really made out of it and stuff like that. But most people aren't. So I feel like I don't want you to work I don't want to hear from you in the weekend. I don't want you to go enjoy thing, you know, like, you know, because you're going to need that energy kind of for working. It's like, I think entrepreneurs are like, oh, I got to get every hour out of this person, especially in the agency world. You see it the most often. And it's like, my whole philosophy is, if a person needs to work 10 hours for them to be worthwhile enough for you, then you're doing something about your model is flawed. Either that person's not efficient or your service isn't efficient and you're not charging enough that you need that person to work extra hours to accomplish that. And obviously there's always timelines, deadlines, and unique scenarios. But if that's how it always is, that the person has to work extra to accomplish that, there's something's wrong about the model, and just fix it. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, you could actually, I totally agree with you. Like, if that's the case and you're like, there's something wrong with you as the entrepreneur, that you're driving something that's not working. It's time for, as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to face your own reality, your own mistakes.
Yep.
You can't keep investing and pushing things that don't freaking work because you're not going to get to where you want to go.
Yep.
That's a hard one.
That's the hard one.
Dude, yeah, bro, it really is. I remember being so damn frustrated and just like driving relentlessly in the beginning, at White Spider days, especially in the companies before that. It was like I couldn't relate to anybody. I was always angry. People were always, people would leave, and I wouldn't understand why. But now there's been some balance over the years. Like, that's a really good point. Like, and you want to understand that and give people that space to be them, because you can't put me in you can't put a square peg in a round hole.
Yep, it just doesn't work. That was what I was looking for before.
Square peg in a round hole. Boom. Yeah, because like if I said, hey Michael, hey, you want to come work for? Hey, here's the deal. I'm gonna make an offer to you. You ready?
Where's the paper?
Well, here it is. You're going to come work for me in my company. I'm at a position, but I need you. You're going to be like account executive, but you only work.
You can't even say it with the straight.
You can only work 8 to 5. Okay, and you have an hour lunch. Okay, and
an hour 15. Could I have an hour 15 minutes?
No, because I don't want you doing other ideas while you're on my lunch. And I know what you're trying to get at. You're going to eat 15 minutes and spend an hour working on your new business. Yeah, it's not allowed.
Podcast videos.
Podcast dash videos. I have a guy that I know that actually bought that domain, and he's like, he's kidding with me. He's like, hey, I might start podcast-videos.com. And I'm like, all right, dude, that's almost uncool, but it's still kind of
Did
funny.
you transfer the domain yet?
Huh?
Did he give you the domain yet?
No, I haven't got it. Yeah. He's not. I don't.
He's gonna wait for a good thing.
It's gonna wait a couple of years. Oh, but did you take my offer for that job?
I'll think about it.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, you're out. Yeah. But I mean, you can't put us in that scenario. I just kind of think the point, man. Parting words for an entrepreneur. I mean, what does it take, man? Does it really take, Michael, so much of you to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah. I think it takes a lot. I think you have to, like, the biggest thing is, while it's taking a lot, like, still be aware and reflect, because like it's so easy to just get down rabbit holes, and then it's like you have to just come back and reflect, like, are you working on the right stuff? Are you doing the right thing? Like,
it's constant too, man.
Yeah. And it's so hard to pivot when like you're so gung ho about like, this is the right thing, and this is what's the right. It's good business, and it's like, nah, it's kind of stupid, man. But sometimes people just tell you that because they don't get it. But then it's like sometimes they're true, they're right, And even if they don't get it, like that's still an issue. It's like, why don't they get it? If they don't get it, like there's, you might be so far off base that like you might be way too early, so you have to speak to more people and like.
Yeah.
I have a friend that started a business, and it was like in the early phases, like just nobody got it, and now people are starting to get it. So that's kind of like a balance of like, some people just don't get it, which is fine. But like he was very troubled by it. He's like, because one of the people he was speaking to was like an investor in the space who was really smart, and he was like telling me, he's like, why doesn't he get the model? It concerns me that this investor just doesn't get what I'm talking about. And I'm like, it's the right way to think about it. Like, there's a reason why it doesn't get about it. And then, sure enough, like later, the person got it. But I think that's really important, is to like make sure, like, if people aren't understanding, why are they not understanding it? And this is like a core flaw you have to kind of address.
I heard a quote that's right down the alley that a while back that I've been living by for a couple of years now. By the time you're tired of saying it, people are starting to listen. Right, that is so important. I mean, in the space that you're actually right about what you're talking about.
I feel like that's kind of where we are. Where like I've been saying it for a while, like our marketplace, and people are just like they're just starting to. Oh, okay.
You're totally, but what you're doing though, I mean, you haven't worked in that industry, like you're in the right. I mean, it's the truth. Like it's where you're right.
Hopefully.
No,
I'm starting to say it, right?
I believe like it should be good for you to hear for somebody else to say, yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah,
I agree.
No, it's definitely helpful to kind of start seeing that, in this space, like obviously from you that I've done it before and in very similar, I guess similar as you can get. But now, in other spaces and just even Walmart, understanding it and all that, I think it helps a lot because then you could double down your efforts and double down your investments. I think but you still, it's always like you want to keep that startup mentality so that you make sure nobody else, it's there for the taking. I would say it's like we're just invested in it for a while, so we have a head start on some people, but like it's there for the taking.
Yeah, dude.
So
I mean, hey man, been a fantastic episode. I could talk to you. There's actually a lot of. We're gonna meet after this, and I'm gonna continue to talk to you about my emotional well-being. One thing I'll leave is I got one last question. Out of all these people, does your wife understand you?
Starting to. I think she makes peace with knowing that there's a lot going on in here. Just like sometimes you want to hear it, sometimes you just don't.
And she's nothing like you.
No, she's not like entrepreneur mindset at all. Like she's in law school right now.
There you go.
Yeah, like
that's good.
Very smart. The smarter part of me, like very smart, has her head in but very practical.
But she's not in family law, right? Like divorce law?
No. Okay, so I want her to come do in-house for me eventually.
It's not family law.
No family law. I want to. She's like, I want to do fun stuff, like criminal stuff. I mean, business, boring.
I need you to do that. Like you're always campaigning, man. Even her degree is about your business.
Well, same with my sister. My sister's also in law school.
Oh yeah,
and we're paying for a law school, and I'm like this.
Businesses make they make the best. Yeah. I mean, criminal, man. That's you think hard about that. People that are in criminal law forget that your clients are criminals.
Criminals, right? Yeah.
Or whatever you want to call them, accused.
Yeah, and then I think it's even worse to be on the prosecuting side because then a lot of criminals hate you. So
there's no win there, bro.
No win.
I don't know why they do that. Yeah, my wife, she's completely opposite of me. Does not really understand. I don't really understand her either, though. So it works out well.
I think it's too much, right? Like I want to come back from work and just I don't like if my wife thinks that way, and if I really worked with my wife, and it's just like that's my head would never stop, So it's like,
dude, last night I wigged out on my wife. We got done. We were watching a series on Netflix, and it's a good series or whatever, but. And entertaining, but I spent 3 hours watching this thing, and we got up, and I expressed, I was like, "Honey, I can't ever do that again. I cannot sit here and watch this." And she's like, "Oh, is it too bad for you to sit down and spend some time with your wife?" And I go, "No, babe, it's not you. It's not that." I was like, I just feel like that I have had the soul sucked out of me. Because I've been so unproductive. Like, this is not fair for humanity for me to sit here and dive it. Like, I got up, I felt dirty, man. I felt dark.
dirty. Right?
I've been offended her along the way. Well done, man.
I'm sure.
Yeah, he probably is right. All right, man, Michael. It's been a joy. We got to do this again next time you come in town. Let's do it again.
Next month,
Yeah, cool. That sounds good, man. All right, thanks everybody for listening. And audience, if you want to get a hold of Michael,
just reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, Michael Lebhar.
And that's Lebhar. Michael Lebhar. Shoot him a message on LinkedIn. Be a great person to talk to if you're looking to start a business or something like that.
I'm always down
Yeah. That. Awesome, man. And this has been another, don't forget, subscribe to our e-newsletter for Big Talk. It's a great way to make sure that you know when the new episodes drop, and also get some extra content there. Don't forget to like and subscribe on our YouTube, all that kind of freaking cheesy stuff. And if you want to sponsor the show, anybody,
anytime,
I like anytime.
You can message me directly, and I'll give you my Venmo.
You're at least going to take 15%. Looks like you started a new business. Oh, hey, let's see. You'll give us 15. Hey, you got a sponsor. It's only for $100. Next thing you know, you're in the podcast sponsorship business. Service business. I can see you right now. All right, folks, been another episode of Big Talk about small business. We'll be missing Mark again, like I said, for the next few times, but he'll be back soon with him and his beautiful, long, wavy hair. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Big Talk about small business. If you have any questions or ideas for upcoming shows, be sure to head over to our website, www.bigtalkaboutsmallbusiness.com, and click on the Ask the Host button for the chance to have your questions answered on the show. Stay connected with us on LinkedIn at Big Talk About Small Business. And be sure to head over to our website to read articles, browse episodes, and ask questions about upcoming shows.